What's going on, guys? TG or ThunderGod here, and today we are doing a pretty interesting video. I kind of touched on this topic in my Naruto and Sasuke, like kind of swap the roles videos where it's funny that I did videos, but I redid that video twice. But essentially, Naruto going to the 5 Kage summit and kind of handling the same conditions that Sasuke did is a really interesting topic, and I honestly thought it deserved its own video, so here I am. Today with me, I have a special guest, Jay the Great. Say what's going on, bro. Introduce yourself.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Thanks to ThunderGod for having me on, for sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this is obviously a very big and broad topic that's going to require a lot of explanation, but I think we should probably start with kind of putting or kind of saying the groundwork for how strong Sage Mode Naruto is to kind of, give us a little bit of a framework to work around this video. So now, if you're like me, you do almost all your shopping online, whether it be clothes, anime merchandise, or even ordering food from time to time. This sometimes does cause me to worry about how secure my internet and info really is. This is where NordVPN is coming in clutch, helping you avoid targeted pricing, fake websites, and even bait and switch attacks with a VPN. Make sure you and your credit card details are secure. You might say, TG, it's the 21st century. I almost shop with everything on my phone. NordVPN has got you covered. Install Nord on up to 6 of your devices to give you stress-free internet usage anywhere, anytime. Even while browsing, you're protected, as so many service providers would love to grab and collect your browsing history, so you can browse, peruse, or just window shop in complete peace with NordVPN. Stay hidden to stay safe. Use the URL nordvpn.com/thundergods, as shown on screen, to get the 2-year plan with an exclusive deal plus 4 bonus months on top. It's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you want to be safe online like your old buddy TG, click the link in the description or the pinned comment to take you right to Nord. Thank you again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Sage Mode Naruto is a really interesting fighter. He obviously beats down fatigued Pain. Now, whether this kind of depends on individual to individual how weakened you think Pain is. At the very least, the Diva path is the one that's fatigued, but you can honestly argue that Pain himself has just expended so much chakra against Elite Village that he wouldn't be at full power. So, while Sage Mode Naruto versus Pain is pretty impressive, I don't think Sage Mode Naruto is stronger than Pain, even though he does kind of get like rep for it in the lore that he beats Pain. He did have a lot aiding him in that fight, but he has a great showing. Like, most people wouldn't be able to do what he did against Pain. On top of this, throughout that arc, he's heavily implied to have surpassed Sage Mode Jiraiya. I believe there's also a statement in the data book that confirms this, but the whole narrative of that arc is that he's training to surpass Jiraiya in Sage Mode Mastery. Maybe you can argue like Jiraiya could still take a dub because he's a very different fighter in Sage Mode. He has a very niche arsenal. He's Mon Pa, Frog Song, and stuff like that. I think that's fair, but I personally just lean towards Sage Mode Naruto. It seems very implied during that point. And you can make some lore assertions from Sage Mode Jiraiya to the 5 Kage, maybe off of Hiruzen, who more so scales as a rival to Orochimaru during the Konoha Crush. There's all sort of that. The 5 Kage also grows, so maybe you're not a fan of the lore suggestions of Dasani being Hokage tier. So, there is some lore potential for Naruto being very relevant at this point in the series to the 5 Kage. On top of this, he has a really good performance against the Ninetales. Do you want to talk about the Ninetales stuff real quick?
Yeah, so a lot of people sort of wonder whether or not, I call it the astral plane, if you're the same power as you are in the real world. For my lens, I would conclude that there's nothing to contradict the claim that you are the same level of power as you are in the real world. In fact, to further add up on top of that, if you're not in your own mental plane, you're actually weaker. Killer B points this out when he's within Naruto's own mental plane trying to tame the Ninetales. So the way I look at Naruto's scaling here is he is certainly relative to be able to do what he was able to execute against the Ninetales. However, he's certainly, I would say, not capable enough to blatantly defeat the Ninetales. There wasn't, I would say, a significant event of defeat until Kushina intervened and used her chains and aided Naruto in defeating the Ninetales and truly taming it. So at best, I would conclude that Sage Mode Naruto is relative to some arbitrary extent to the Ninetales, can combat the Ninetales. However, I wouldn't conclude that he's equivalent or certainly above the Ninetales at this point in time. So
yeah, phenomenal explanation. And it's a great showing by Naruto, whose arsenal at this point is pretty extensive. He has a great amount of like durability negation with in the form of Frog Kumite. It also allows him to be an absolute animal in hand-to-hand. He's pretty much able to dominate most fighters in the series at this point. He has like those invisible frog punches. Also, he reaps the benefits of Sage Mode's enhanced stats. For those who don't know, like Sage Mode, because I've explained this a couple of times on the channel, Sage Mode is essentially a fusion of your chakra supply plus nature energy. So this is also falls into why Naruto would generally be stronger than Jiraiya, but it essentially is taking Naruto's absurd base chakra and fusing it with nature energy to just make an overall stronger Sage Mode. Not saying Jiraiya doesn't have a lot of chakra, but obviously compared to Naruto, it's just not on the same level. So that kind of adds to that and why Sage Mode is such an amp. On top of this, he has a great deal of threat perception. He's basically like aided by the amount of nature energy. This is pretty common stuff that most people associate with. There's also, he has completed the Rasen Shuriken at this point. Do you want to talk about like the Rasen Shuriken real quick?
Yeah, so what we do know about Naruto, you know, the last time that we see him in this mode before the war arc, of course, is the Rasen Shuriken is a very useful ability. It is certainly limited though, because he's only able to use two at a time, two during that point in time. So the Rasen Shuriken is a tool he could utilize, but it's a very restricted tool at this point in time in the narrative. So it would certainly aid him against the 5 Kage Summit, but it would certainly be one that he had to be wary of in using, because there is a risk of him losing Sage Mode access, which will be very, very detrimental against some of the opponents in this discussion. Another thing I'd like to add is when it comes to Sage Mode, to me, this is the way I look at it when it comes to Naruto's development. There's these sort of checkpoints in the narrative, like ThunderGod said, where he surpasses his predecessors, right? So we see him get a Rasen Shuriken against Kakazu. That is where he surpasses, or it's implied at least that he surpasses or is relative to Kakashi, or Kakashi even iterates this himself. He's like, oh, this guy might have passed me up. He passed me up. Then when he gets Sage Mode, that's when he surpasses, I would say, Sannin level. Even Paul
Agreed.
says himself,
Yeah.
you know, he says himself, oh, he has surpassed his predecessors. Some people like to even imply he surpassed Minato. I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that either. That's downplay. It's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that the way to conclude that he did pass Jiraiya up is just the empirical evidence we have for both. Jiraiya has trouble with the weaker passive pain, gets dealt with very quickly as soon as all 6 congregate to dispose of him, while conversely, Naruto was able to go toe-to-toe with several passive pain, including who most believe as the most dominant and powerful being the Tendo path. So it's just very blatant that a checkpoint has been reached in Naruto's shinobi career, that being Sage Mode. And now, because of that, he is in new, what I call rare air. He's beyond Sannin level. He's in this rare air that not many shinobi reach. So a lot of people don't seem to put that into consideration or into perspective. But yeah, he certainly reaches a new level here with Sage Mode. So
yeah, absolutely agreed. And this is also coupled with the fact that on top of that, Naruto does have a 5-minute timer on his Sage Mode, which nobody brings up for some reason. I've never seen that talked about, but he does have a timer on it. The only reason you don't do it or really see that is because in the Pain fight, he's limited to 2 Rasen Shuriken per Sage Mode use, and Pain is so strong that he's kind of forced to just spam it over and over and over again to quickly eliminate the paths. He can also run out regularly. So, like, an example of this, right? And we're going to talk about this in the video, you know, him just using up all his, like, nature energy or, like, you know, nature chakra will just end up, like, running out the timer. So, it is possible, but Rasen Shuriken's the big one. Like, I believe there's a point when he's fighting Pain where he uses 1 Rasen Shuriken and continuous Rasengan variants, and that's what actually runs out his Sage Mode. So, you know, it can be, you know, ran out, but that's kind of like the Spark Nodes version on Sage Mode Naruto. Do you want to add anything to that? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, so another misconception I commonly see in the Naruto fandom is that, like you said, people credit Naruto for defeating the almighty Pain, and not that he didn't do that, but like you said earlier, he was certainly fatigued. Like, just put this into perspective. He Shinra Tenseis an entire village, and then he goes on to fight an entire village one-on-one. And then he goes into an altercation with an individual that has all the info on him, and then some, while he has none, and he still technically defeats Sage Mode Naruto. Naruto had to resort to the Nine-Tails chakra. So yes, Naruto is strong, but to try and conclude that while he's even relative to Pain, I wouldn't go that far. And I think the several handicaps on Pain imply that. But yeah, I just want to bring that up because a lot of people seem to misinterpret Pain's performance and Pain's defeat.
Yeah, so. I agree. And even if you want to argue, like, after Naruto goes berserk with the Nine-Tails, he has his Sage Mode restored. Like, he pulls up in Sage Mode. And Pain, like, the Diva path, like, the one Tendo path, is still able to run out that timer still. So it's just like, it's very clear that Sage Mode Naruto on his own is not on Pain's level. And I think that's pretty explicit, but I always just do, like Jay says, like I always hear occasionally that people try and like say he's like comparable to like full power Pain, and like I think he puts up a good fight clearly as we saw, but he's
Yeah.
obviously not on that level. Just like Sasuke when he fought Itachi wasn't on full power Itachi's level. It just wasn't the case. So the rules for this video are we're gonna give Naruto at the start of this two clones kind of like he had in the Pain fight. We're kind of going to use Pain Arc Naruto, I suppose. There's no real difference between Pain Arc Naruto and 5 Kage Summit Naruto because he doesn't really train. And the only time he attempts to train Sage Mode to make it last longer, Sakura pulled up on her bullshit. So it just really, yeah, like there wasn't really anything to that. She literally interrupted his training. So we're just going to kind of assume they're the same strength. And this is going to extend into arguments we talk about with him and Sasuke in this video. But essentially, we'll give that Naruto, we'll give him the scroll and 2 shadow clones as well during this fight or like these phases. If they run out in an earlier phase, we're not going to give it for later phases. We're going to be kind of segmenting this video up into phases. So we'll kind of be putting Naruto in the similar phases that Sasuke was in and seeing if he'll be able to pass them. So, for example, phase 1 is going to be Sage Mode Naruto plus Jugo plus Suigetsu plus Karin against the Raikage and his AHC and Dowries. To kind of give you an example, and we'll progressively get to the different phases that Sasuke was in at the 5 Kage Summit. We'll also be giving Naruto the clones he had against Pain, as there is a bit of a difference between Naruto with clones, without clones. We'll talk about that a little bit more into phase 1. There is a difference, but it doesn't make that much of a difference for a couple of reasons, but it does matter. So when that we'll be dealing with that. But without further ado, because we've been kind of going on this segment for a minute, let's get into the video. We're also going to be starting Naruto off in Sage Mode, or just say like he gathered nature energy before he walked into the 5 Kage Summit, and that his location got revealed by Zetsu. So Samurai showed up and started aping him, and then the Raikage is what came to fight him. Now, inevitably, we're going to have to talk about this, so we're going to talk about it here real quick, and we're going to kind of dive into Naruto versus Sasuke for just a second, because it's very relevant in comparing their performances in the 5 Kage Summit.
Yeah, so this is definitely a very debated topic to this day in the Naruto fandom. The way I look at it, I look at the statements that Naruto makes at the end of the 5 Kage Summit altercation post Danzo's death. He says that if him and Sasuke were to fight, both would die. And keep in mind, this is a blind and weakened Sasuke that he is iterating this to, implying that he sees this specific iteration of Sasuke at that level of threat. Later on, 4 chapters later, he goes on to say, I would need the Nine Tails chakra in order to beat Sasuke. The way I interpret that statement is that he's implying to reach his goal, right, which is to not only defeat Sasuke, but avoid dying himself and bring him back without dying, without killing Sasuke, he's going to have to master the Nine Tails chakra in order to do that. So there are 2 sort of conclusions to come to. There is, he's just inferior to Sasuke, or he is relative to Sasuke, but not powerful enough to not die in the process of bringing Sasuke back without killing Sasuke himself. I lean towards more relative. I don't think he's blatantly inferior to Sasuke. I mean, people like Zetsu are implying his level of caliber, so Getsu. Yeah. It is certainly contentious, but I think that Naruto and Sasuke are relative, but I do see Sasuke as the superior to some arbitrary extent. Yeah. That's what I would say about the comparison.
Yeah. And there is like a narrative element too, where like Naruto is progressively becoming more aware of like Indra's presence, and he did know that he needed to confront his own hatred to confront Sasuke's, which basically made it like he was basically aware of like what was happening, that him and Sasuke were caught up in a cycle, and that simply killing Sasuke or dying to Sasuke wasn't going to solve anything. He needed to come up with a different solution. So there is an element to this to where you could maybe argue, oh, is this also just strictly like narratively? But then you could also say, well, these 2 things don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. They can both exist at the same time. So, I definitely, the bottom line we're getting at is that Naruto should just also be very comparable to Sasuke, who's performing well in the 5 Kage Summit. That's pretty much the bottom line. If you want to say Naruto's stronger or weaker, I think that's fine. I think if you're going to compare Naruto, I think it needs to be strictly Danzo fight Sasuke, I think, or something to that degree, as that Sasuke is pretty definitively stronger, at least from the beginning. But yeah. Now,
agreed. Yeah.
The reason we needed to discuss Naruto versus Sasuke is because, obviously Sasuke fights the Raikage. Now, starting off, there's a couple issues with Naruto in this situation, right? He's going to be starting off on a bit of a back foot, because Naruto as an individual is not going to have a real way to break Jugo or Suigetsu out of C's Genjutsu. He does have, like, he does know how to break people out of Genjutsu. Jiraiya did teach him this, but The issue is, right, it's not going to be as immediate as like when Sasuke just snapped them out with the Sharingan. And the reason this matters is because C's Genjutsu lead was a strategy by the Raikage and Darui to pretty much just jump on Sasuke and like ape him. Naruto's already not going to do that. And the reason this has a bad ripple effect for the rest of this fight is because when Jugo did kind of like get broken free of that Genjutsu, he does go berserk and start launching beams at the Raikage and all this crazy stuff, which allowed Sasuke to put C under Genjutsu, which made it so Cutting could track, could basically like track Danzo's location. But on top of that, it made it so that they basically just eliminated one combatant and ensured that Suigetsu himself could kind of fight Dowry 1v1 and not get put under Genjutsu. So if you're gonna have this like situation play out, Suigetsu himself is not going to be able to defend Naruto from the same abrupt attack that the Raikage and like Suigetsu or Raikage and Daura like throw at him. Now there also is a layer to this. I will say though, however, Naruto shouldn't have too much of a problem with Darui or the Raikage in a lower version of his cloak. The reason I say this is that Suigetsu, Jugo, and Sasuke with just his base Sharingan can all react to the Raikage at this point. Granted, Sasuke does use the Sharingan to kind of like precog dodge it, but again, Naruto should have like comparable to even greater threat perception at this point, especially if you maybe go off the third Raikage stuff later in the series. So they should be comparable. So I can't necessarily see like version 1 Raikage being too much of an issue for Naruto at this point. It just really shouldn't be. I don't think he's gonna get Liger bombed or anything like that. I think he's gonna be putting up a much better fight than Sasuke did. The problem with Naruto at this point though is definitely version 2 Raikage. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so like ThunderGod said, the way that the initiation of this event will certainly be different for Naruto in comparison to Sasuke. Sasuke has a Sharingan, right? He's able to decipher Genjutsu that are being executed upon him or his teammates. Naruto wouldn't be able to do that. He would not be able to decipher that, and because of that, he would be susceptible to being Genjutsu'd, and that would mean that, unlike the original storyline, Jugo and Suigetsu would not be able to protect him from attacks from Darui and the Raikage. Now, like ThunderGod said as well, the advantage that Naruto does have is in comparison to Sasuke in base without his Susanoo, he is more than likely physically superior to Sasuke, indicating that if he does take strikes from the Raikage, that's if he does, he will definitely withstand them better. And there's actually a data book statement that describes and iterates about the Russian Shuriken, where it says that the Russian Shuriken becomes the perfect Genjutsu due to Sage Mode giving Naruto a tougher body. That implies that not only does his physical and speed characteristics get amped, but also his durability itself. So he would certainly do better in a physical altercation in comparison to Sasuke. But like ThunderGod said, once V2 is awakened and utilized by the fourth Raikage, he will run into trouble. At this point, we're talking about nearly Minato levels of speed, and Naruto doesn't reach this threshold until KCM later on in the war arc, when even the Raikage himself says, you're only the second guy to ever dodge my full speed. Only your father was able to do the same. So once Raikage gets serious and he starts to utilize V2 and uses that caliber of speed in his arsenal to combat Naruto will begin to dwindle. His success rate will begin to dwindle. He'll begin to struggle. He probably will even have tough times reacting to the Raikage. So yeah, that's where things start to get very, very difficult for him in Taka, and he'll probably fall to the Raikage and his aides at that point. So
yeah, I'll add to this because, I will say that's like I feel like that's pretty definitive. Most people can argue. Even if you think Naruto can combat the Raikage, again, the speed should just be pretty clear that the Raikage is faster. Now, something I want to add in is that Naruto does have options, however, at this point, is something to know. So, for example, right, like let's say Suigetsu's fighting Darui and Jugo's under Genjutsu. You could actually maybe make the case that Naruto just makes some shadow clones to go aid them in their fight. So he's able to beat up Darui with that shadow clone. Another shadow clone goes to, break Jugo out of Genjutsu. The problem with those two, though, is that they're just so much more definitively below the Raikage's full speed. We clearly saw what happened with Jugo. Like, he got body tapped once and just blown back. And Suigetsu himself is very weak to lightning release. So it's not as if they're necessarily that useful against the Raikage. It's more so if Naruto chooses to do that, he can also summon clones to kind of help mitigate the Raikage speed advantage, maybe with some Rasengan variants. That could be a potential win con. The biggest thing in Naruto's favor is him attempting to nuke the room with the Rasen Shuriken. Now, I don't think this would work for a couple reasons. I don't think it would hit because we already see Fatigued Pain is able to react to the Rasen Shuriken pretty confidently, along with the Raikage reacting to arguably faster attacks in the form of the Amaterasu. Now, that might be like a contentious debate, like argument, Amaterasu versus the Rasen Shuriken in terms of speed, but I'm on the side that Amaterasu would more than likely be faster. I don't think that's like that too hot of a take, but
Yeah.
we have seen like Fatigue Pain react to the Rasen Shuriken, and the Raikage again should be a speed tier above, not necessarily like, I don't want to say a speed tier above this Naruto, right? Because like it's a little vague like how much stronger the QB chakra is than Sage Mode Naruto. Because like the two forms function in very different ways. They're fundamentally very different forms. They have very different abilities. So to say like, oh, QB's just greater and the Raikage is just greater because of that, like I understand why that just sounds bad. Like I fully understand that. But I would see like a possible condition for Naruto is just nuke the room with the Rasen Shuriken. But again, like we've seen the Raikage kind of deal with these large scale attacks. And the problem is too is that if Naruto does kind of miss the Rasen Shuriken against the Raikage, he's gonna need one Jugo or Suigetsu or maybe Karin to actually summon his clone, or to have it basically, I guess you could maybe say, let me scrap this. He's basically gonna need to pop one of his clones to reignite Sage Mode, which may take some time, especially if it's farther away or outside the building. He might need someone to summon it. So it's definitely gonna be tough for Naruto and his clones to take down the Raikage at this point. And the reason the clone argument, I mentioned before at the beginning of this video that Naruto with his clones without his clones matters is because in his fight with Pain, he's able to not create more than 3 shadow clones. I believe it's 3 or 4 against Pain, because otherwise any more than that would disrupt the 2 clones that he has chilling on Mount Miyaboku. The inverse to that is like, okay, let's say you take away the clones and he performs something against it like he did against the Ninetales. What people need to understand is that also fundamentally would also drain his Sage Mode timer very quickly, because he's just going to be expending way more chakra and run out his Sage Mode timer. So while I could see a potential, right, like let's say you didn't give him the clones and he does like the 100 shadow clone barrage, okay, I could see you like him potentially like nuking the entire room and like destroying his teammates. While I could potentially see that, it just also like if it doesn't work, he's gonna have no Sage Mode left and no clones there to compensate, so he can't get the timer back. So it's kind of like you're hoping like this is a one-off strategy as well. I mean, we also don't know, because Naruto was sitting still against the QB, he might have just been continuously taking in nature energy instead of just as he's losing it against the QB, instead of just like, oh, he has Sage Mode until it runs out. So I definitely think Naruto has options in this fight, and I definitely think he would perform a lot better than Sasuke, because Sasuke was just kind of sitting in the ribcage and trying to smoke the Raikage with the Amaterasu. He just kind of got lucky that the Raikage was more hot-headed and decided to attack his Enton, which was impressive speed-wise. But again, like the issue is he's just not going to be able to like permanently take down the Raikage, and the Raikage is fast enough to be able to capitalize on Naruto losing Sage Mode. I know I talked for a minute. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so like ThunderGod said, strategy is going to be very, very essential to the success rate of Naruto and company in this altercation. Like ThunderGod said, he at best can create 3 or 4 clones while in battle without offsetting the other clones, which are gathering nature energy. And those are essential for him to be even in a relative ballpark of the Raikage's physical capabilities. Without Sage Mode, this isn't really a discussion at all. It would be a wash. So he's going to have to keep that in mind. And like ThunderGod said, the way Sage Mode seems to work, right? There's this time limit that's presupposed, 5 minutes. But if he utilizes very high amounts of chakra beyond reason, it's safe to assume that time limit is actually less. So if he uses the same attack he used against the Ninetales on the Raikage, there's a very good chance that right after that, or very, very soon after that, he will lose access to Sage Mode, and one of his clones will go away, and he'll only have another 5 minutes. The way I look at that attack is that would be last resort. If he's on his last dying breath, Taka's beaten down, he's losing, his back's against the wall, then I would see him doing something of that nature. However, like ThunderGod said, that is a last resort. So his strategy is going to have to be very, very airtight. He's going to have to come in with the right attacks in mind. Without prep time, if it's like Sasuke, he's going to have a very tough time, because Taka, the discrepancy between Taka and the Raikage is vast.
Yeah.
Taka isn't really support in this situation, and with C aiding the Raikage, it's even more of a problematic altercation for them because C will be disrupting maybe Jugo or maybe Suigetsu or maybe even Naruto during that altercation. So not only is there a speed discrepancy, but there's a Genjutsu threat as well. So the probability of Naruto passing this phase is very unlikely. It is a possibility, but the probability is certainly low.
Yeah.
And Naruto had to he had to fight perfectly,
Yeah.
basically.
Well,
So,
one of
yeah.
the better like win conditions for Naruto, I guess you could say, is like you argue, right? We have a similar situation of the third Raikage. Now, obviously, that's not a 1-to-1 because the third Raikage
Yeah.
is very different than the fourth Raikage. Barring who you think is stronger, they also fight kind of differently. The Raikage is more based around like he's more of like a kind of like speeding around, whereas the third has like this high AP, hell stab, and stuff like that, which is very
Yeah.
similar to Chidori, which kind of did let Naruto aim dodge it. Even if you, an interesting note that not too many people have brought up, and I got put on this, is that when Naruto actually Rasengans the third Raikage's armor, and if you argue the third's more durable than the fourth's lightning cloak, he actually is shown cracking the arm of the third Raikage. So if you kind of take that into account and like say, okay, maybe he aim dodges the Raikage and the speed disparity just isn't that deep, then you could maybe say he'd be able to do some damage. So if you do kind of go up that speed comparison, there is a case for it because if you actually look at the third Raikage example and you assume for what the Sage Mode Naruto in the war has some relativity to this Naruto, right? He's actually shown cracking the Raikage's arm through his lightning armor with that basic Rasengan. So, and obviously, people are going to get into the whole Rasen Shuriken thing, but the Rasen Shuriken just blatantly destroyed its hide. Maybe he was kind of able to get up because he's an Tensei. He does have the cracks healing. But the bottom line is, even if you kind of go off this win condition for Naruto, the Raikage as an individual is the kind of guy to just like fight through that type of injury. Like it doesn't really make a difference to him. He's literally fighting Sasuke while his arm's on fire with the Matarasu. So even if Naruto like damaged his arm or for whatever reason blew it off in a similar capacity, I just don't necessarily see it coming out with like a victory for him. You kind of have to be generous and say Naruto maybe does like an aimbot Rasen Shuriken, which he just doesn't really have the maneuverability like he does in Sage mode or excuse me, QB Chakra mode, where he can like pass the chakra off with extended chakra arms coming out. So I don't necessarily seeing this being a good win con. And even if he did kind of give it to him, you'd have to argue like his basic Rasengan like did severe damage to the Raikage, or the Rasen Shuriken hit. If the Rasen Shuriken hit, I can concede. I think it would be very effective. The whole wind versus lightning, on top of how potent the Rasen Shuriken is, barring the third stuff, because that's its own discussion. But yeah, it is possible for Naruto. I just don't think it's as probable for Naruto because you kind of have to give him like a best case scenario. Whereas in like a general setting, we just lean towards the Raikage, especially since Sasuke did kind of hard counter his aids. Whereas, Naruto can combat them, but at the same time, there is that difference. And this isn't like a dig at Naruto, because Sasuke also literally struggled with the same thing. Like, he arguably didn't pass this either. So, we don't really give him the pass for phase one, but that's not too crazy considering like Sasuke struggled just as much, if not more. We actually think he performed far better than Sasuke did. So that is saying something.
Oh yeah. So before we get to phase two, I do think the third and the fourth Raikage comparison is definitely essential in this discussion because, like you said, if we want to give the benefit of the doubt to Naruto and presuppose a couple things, then his chances of success do go up. If we presuppose that the third Raikage has relative durability to the fourth Raikage, and we see how Rasengan cracks his armor, then a barrage of Rasengans more than likely would hit the Raikage. But if we don't give the benefit of the doubt to Naruto, then it's more than likely that Rasengans wouldn't even hurt the Raikage. That's even if he could hit the Raikage past V1. I don't see him even being able to hit him. But I would say that you have to sort of quantitatively or qualitatively analyze and assess the discrepancy between the third and the fourth. The way I look at it is the fourth is superior based off of the A-Tail stalemating the third and Killer Bee being a perfect Jinchuriki and Jinchuriki's being superior to Tailed Beasts individually, and the fourth being above Killer Bee, or at least it's implied so. So I actually think the fourth is more of a problem than the third.
I agree.
At least in terms of speed. At least in terms of speed. As far as durability, okay, like he doesn't have durability showing, so I can't exactly assess what his durability is, not even qualitatively, because he never really sustains damage, except against Amaterasu. Amaterasu is a whole different story.
Yeah, it's
But
literally burned the entirety of the A tails. Like it's Kage.
yeah,
I think it's a problem for her
it's a
dimension. It's like
problem.
yeah,
It,
like
it
yeah,
Yeah, it's literally as hot as the sun. That's how what the databook states. So it's certainly a very, very high P ability, which Naruto clearly doesn't possess. So if we do presuppose that the Raikage even has superior durability to his father, then there's almost no way Naruto could hurt him.
yeah,
It'd be not only would he not be able to touch him, he wouldn't be able to hurt him either, which I think honestly is the more likely possibility
yeah.
in this scenario. So Thunder God's right. It's very unlikely that he gets past this
Yeah,
this
yeah.
phase.
Next phase we have is like assuming, right? Let's like assume if Naruto loses a phase, we'll say that, but we're assuming for whatever reason he did kind of make it past this, and he's in
Yeah.
Sasuke's position. By the way, phase 2 now it's just Naruto on his own because in this phase, Suigetsu and Jugo are out of commission, which I mean, you kind of figured anyway, but Kerin's still the only support. This is kind of the deal for the rest of the 5 Kage summits. So there you go.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna repeat that bit, but essentially this is where Gaara arrives with Tamari and Kankuro to fight Naruto. Now, Gaara's really weird at this point because he's relatively featless, right? He has like one single good feat, maybe two, and that is like intercepting the Raikage and like Sasuke's Enton. Do you wanna add on? I know you have an opinion on this.
Because what I see very commonly in the Naruto fandom is that many claim that because Gaara was able to intercept the fourth Raikage's guillotine drop, that his sand is superior to the Raikage's full speed. Now, there are several empirical pieces of evidence to debunk this. One is the very fact that the guillotine drop is an attack that is vertical. He's jumping up and coming down. So you're going to have to prove that him coming down and the gravity that is aiding his speed would give him a speed that is equivalent to him going at full speed like it did against Minato. That's not provable. In the laws of physics, it's very easy to deduce that he's not going as fast as he would if he was using V2 like he did against Minato. So the claim that Gaara's sand speed is that vast and that high is very unlikely because of that fact. On top of that, we then see an actual feat where he is relative later on. This is a stronger Gaara, by the way, in the war, relative to his father Raza, who we know was alive during the Raikage's reign, and the Raikage iterates many times. The databooks as well iterate that he is the fastest man on the planet, only second to Minato, and with him dead, he is the king of speed. So Gaara having sand at this speed is very, very, very unlikely, and actually is contradicted by the pieces of empirical evidence I just provided. So you can't use that claim in this scenario because it's just not true. So Gaara-san would not blitz Naruto. Naruto would not get tsunamied by light speed sand or anything like that. Gaara's sand honestly probably wouldn't be too much of a challenge to Naruto, who's beyond Sannin. And as we know, Rasa lost to a Sannin, who Gaara struggled with. So if we're talking about individuals even beyond Sannin, Gaara's going to have a very, very tough time. And honestly, the aids, not to be mean, the aids are not going to be a problem.
Well, yeah, like what is yeah, I'll say this, because this is like the benefit of Naruto. He like his clones just are able to combat the aids and make it so there's no problem for him at all. So he doesn't really have to fight in that type of encounter. In this like situation, Dowry would also hop in, but again, like what is Dowry gonna do to Sage Mode Naruto's clones? Now, I will say for Gaara's speed, like maybe you're generous, maybe you say like, oh, Rasa got taken like off guarded or whatever, like sure. I will say to give Gaara like a little bit of benefit. I think one of the better, if you were gonna make a case for Gaara, you could say, okay, his sand would like even maybe the speed is a bit questionable. Its defenses are pretty impressive because Sasuke's like Inferno style and the Raikage's lightning armor both just don't hit each other through it. It actually like is able to kind of withstand both of them like shooting against it. So maybe you could say like, okay, Naruto's Rasengans might not be too relevant here. Maybe you could say the Rasen Shuriken that's kind of like a weird discussion. I'm not gonna lie, like Rasen Shuriken versus Gaara Sand, there's almost like no way to quantify that. I'm not gonna lie, it's really weird. I would honestly probably lean towards the Rasen Shuriken, just generally speaking, but that's such a tough discussion that I almost can't see like there's no like objective way to mark that, not gonna lie. Like I would just lead off the Rasen Shuriken for like lore implications. This also could be extended if you think Naruto's Rasen Shuriken is like greater than Minato's Rasengan. Obviously we all read the one shot, pretty crazy stuff with what he can do there. So there is some potential there. But I will say, For this round, like Naruto's main win con is honestly to escape the room. So if you kind of look at it like that, he doesn't even necessarily need to fight Gaara at this point. He could actually just, throw multiple Rasen Shuriken or have his clones like break the pillars in the room to kind of perform a similar strat to Sasuke. Or he could just nuke the room and like leave with Karin. Like he could throw 2 Rasen Shurikens, maybe throw some smoke bombs down. He doesn't really have to play on Gaara's terms, whereas maybe you could say like a sand coffin could happen, but again, like I don't necessarily think like this Gaara is like, because of the whole speed argument, I think it's a bit questionable. I don't see him doing too well against this Sage Mode Naruto.
Yeah, I think that what this comes down to, it's essentially sort of like an unstoppable force. At worst for Naruto, it's an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
Yes.
At worst, he can't get through the defense. Maybe it is fast enough to like deflect him from trying to blitz Gaara. At that point, Gaara's just playing defensive. I don't see him capturing Naruto and a sand coffin or a sand tsunami or anything like that, because Naruto just has better speed feats, as we have reiterated and re-emphasized here. So at the very worst, he just wards off Gaara a little bit and he leaves. Like ThunderGod said, at best, his sand can't even stop Naruto because he's too fast.
Yeah.
Or maybe Rasen Shurikens are strong enough to bypass the defense itself. At that point, Gaara would probably lose his life if Naruto has that intention. So more than likely, even in the worst case scenario, Naruto would still come out of this alive. That's what I would say.
Yeah,
So
I definitely think he should be able to pass, and I don't think the aids really do too much. And if Naruto's able to take him out relatively quickly, if he's able to make shadow clones against Gaara, I think that's it. And I definitely think he'd be able to catch Gaara lacking. Just because I'll say this too, like Naruto's, we talked about some of the strategy, but his strategy with shadow clones is probably some of the best in the series. Him and
absolutely.
Sasuke,
Yep.
and we'll outline this more in the Danzo fight, but him and Sasuke very differently. They're both battle geniuses, but in very different ways. Like Naruto's a lot better at those like improv quick plays with his shadow clones to catch people by surprise. Whereas Sasuke's more of like, he's able to set up the battlefield in like a long-term chess game to where he comes out with his win condition. So they both battle very differently, but Naruto's like quick plays, I definitely think would be able to catch Gaara lacking at this point. Like I can't necessarily see Gaara, putting him into like a different, like a position of where Naruto wouldn't be able to outplay him, especially if he's able to perform these types of plays against Rinnegan users. So I think Naruto would do well, even if he doesn't necessarily do what Sasuke does. I definitely think he could make it to a point where he could just blatantly escape the room, which is what Sasuke needed to do. Because the difference between this phase and the first phase, that Sasuke was actively just trying to fight the Raikage and kill him, where in phase 2, he was just blatantly, like, trying to leave. So there is that. But we do see Naruto passing this phase. Again, the aids don't make too much of a difference. He should just... And, let's say I even just to, like, cap this off. Let's say you kept the 2 shadow clone rule. You would kind of have to argue he expended both his shadow clones in the first fight. Which would give him a total of 3 bursts or 15 minutes. I think Gaara pulls up before that's over. So I also think, So
I agree.
I think that, say Naruto's in a stage mode at this point isn't too fair either. So we think Naruto passes this.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think that the differentiation you made between Sasuke and Naruto is a good one. And I think it's important because you're right. They are both battle geniuses in their own ways. And essentially they're like the converse of each other, right? Because Sasuke is he's this tactical, very concise combatant that carefully like chooses the next pawn to move on the chessboard, while conversely Naruto I call him like this chaotic maverick of a genius, because he improvises on the fly in the midst of battle. He does the most unpredictable things that you can imagine, which is why he was able to defeat some guys that he shouldn't have, like Gaara in part 1, or Sasuke later on the narrative, or Pain, or things like that, because he has this unpredictable nature. And with this factor in play, he really is a genius in his own sort. He's like a maverick, while, like I said, Sasuke is like this high IQ tactical genius. So they're definitely very different in their battle strategy.
Consistently just fooling people with dojutsu. Like he even, like a smaller example, this even goes back to the Chunin exams. He predicts what Neji thought he was going to do, which was sit back at the end of his clone barrage and just fools Neji with the shadow clone. And it's like, okay,
literally,
this dude's got plays. Like let's not misinterpret it. So Naruto is a genius in his own right as well. So I think like saying he also wouldn't make comparable plays to Sasuke is extremely disingenuous. He's just not. He's not book smart. That's where people get it twisted.
Exactly.
He's not done by any metric. So yeah.
In practice, he's smart. Yeah. Exactly.
Next up, we have phase 3, and this is Naruto in the meeting room. Now, I will say, if you did argue he kind of like is able to get out the room in which like Sasuke was in previously, he would at the very least have time to gather nature energy for Shadow Clone or for Sage Mode, or just drop a Shadow Clone and have it gather nature energy for him if any of his clones were destroyed. So he can always keep like dropping those out throughout this to keep Sage Mode going. But if he pulls up in the meeting room, this is going to be interesting because we were kind of talking about this. We see this kind of going in a similar situation. We definitely see him versus Mei being the first matchup because even though Onoki like knew about Sasuke and the Akatsuki and he knew Sasuke killed Deidara, he didn't care. He's like, I'm my back, bro. My back hurting. So he's definitely, I see taking the lead on this. In which case, you know, if it does kind of go a similar situation with Danzo bolting out the room, because if Sasuke couldn't stop Danzo, and like by that point, like Naruto's not gonna be able to stop him either, because it just took a moment for Mifune to stall. And if Mifune does the same thing and Naruto like backs up or dodges, they're gone, and then Mei is gonna block the door. Now, I'll start by saying this, and this isn't a dig at Mei, but I guess it is. I think she kind of sucks. Now, to be to be fair to Mei, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna lead with the positives first. Her jutsu is very potent. If she does hit Naruto with lava release, there is a good chance he just can't tank it with his durability because it's melting Susanoo, rib cages, her ass, you know, it's melting Sasuke's at a certain point in the war. It does with Madara. The problem is her attacks are too slow. This is an issue. We know this because at full power, she tries to shoot an attack at Sasuke, who he's not even looking at the attack, and he's able to do, like hear or note it's coming, dodges it, right? And then she does it again, and Sasuke just is able to block it with his Susanoo ribcage, react confidently, and Ketin's able to dodge out the way. So you have an inferior character like Ketin dodging it, and then you have Sasuke himself who's just reacting to it. So I don't think she's tagging Naruto in any capacity. If you did say like the fight progressed to the point where she was able to force him into that room that Sasuke was in, which I don't think she will. I also don't think it's too much of a problem because here's the thing. Sasuke was gonna demolish Mei 1v1 if he didn't like just burn out from like using his MS too much. Like every cell in his body. Talk about this, bro. Like every cell in his body was hurting. But tell the people, talk to him.
Yeah. So unfortunately for Mei fans, if those even exist, Mei is just very inferior even as a Kage.
Yeah.
She has no feats, and like ThunderGod said, even a weakened, you know, blinding, depleting Sasuke was able to casually react to Mei. And even Kage. Kage's not even a combatant, a physical combatant. She's a sensory type ninja, and she was able to react to full power Mei. So unfortunately, Naruto would easily dodge anything that Mei throws at him. She would be a non-factor, and it's very unfortunate for her. She's not even remotely like a threat to him. The real threat, like ThunderGod said, is Onoki. Yeah. Onoki's very willing. He has very high resolve. Even in the the 5 Kage versus Madara fight, he was the leader as far as upping the resolve in the 5 Kage to fight Madara. So he's willing to do what it takes. Like against Sasuke, he wouldn't hesitate to try and eliminate Naruto. He would try to eliminate him. Now, we talked about this earlier. The advantage that Naruto does have that Sasuke doesn't is the stamina that he will possess, because as long as he has clones replenishing his nature energy, he theoretically has infinite nature energy coming into him. So as long as that time limit doesn't expire and or he doesn't utilize like 100,000 Rasengans at the same time, he has replenishment. He's pretty much at full power, and he's not dealing with the negative side effects that Sasuke was dealing with due to the MS and its prolonged usage. So we actually said that he would actually perform all right here, as long as the events go similar to the way they did it for Sasuke, right? The Onoki's trying to particle style him, Mei's fodder ass is trying to kill him. As long as the Raikage and Gaara don't get involved, start like aiding, Naruto will come out of this alive until Obito comes, like he did for Sasuke. Yeah. Zetsu helps with Chonchuro. As long as events go similar, Naruto will more than likely survive this phase. So yeah.
So I'll add to this too, because I definitely agree. The main thing, because Naruto's shadow clones body Mei, I'm not gonna lie, it just is what I don't know how to break this any different way. Like it's just bad. Like it is. But I will say, you know, we talked about Onoki. Like the problem with Onoki in this situation too is like, first and foremost, like where you kind of place Onoki does kind of depend. I personally have him as somewhat of like a pseudo rival to Deidara. It's very implied from their encounter. They're moving at relative speeds in the air, which is actually where Onoki's faster because he like pretty much uses like he's able to fly with the light and boulder jutsu. So he's faster in the air, and even Data notices like you're faster in your prime. So in the air is actually like his full speed. So he's not gonna be able to like fly around and dart around the room like he would in an open space. And on top
Exactly.
of this, right, it did like Data is also like implied to like be able to combat his particle style. Now I know Data was kind of shitting himself. He's like, oh, the geezer snap, but it does seem that like he is a somewhat of a rival to Data at that point. With Sasuke in a much weaker state, heavy Sasuke, being able to take down Data in a high diff fight, very high diff fight. So kind of looking at that, you could maybe assert this Naruto stronger. But the bottom line is that particle style is not going to happen long range. And the reason I say particle style is not gonna have a long range, he's not gonna nuke his aids like at all. Like he's
Yeah.
not gonna do like clearly. He also
Yeah,
can't
exactly.
risk hitting Mei or any of the other Kage. The only thing I see brought up for Onoki's art particle style is just, and I brought this up in previous videos, is that it's comparable to Lord Mu, and Lord Mu thinks his particle style would be faster than Naruto's Rasengan. I can understand this, but but Lord Mu is a sensory shinobi, so it does kind of like he was able to dodge that Rasengan easier. The problem is that he's kind of like directly contradicted because Naruto uses Gaara's sand as like a jump pad and just runs up on Lord Mu and like Rasengan him.
Yeah.
So clearly he was
Yeah.
wrong. Clearly he was wrong. He was like kind of sensing like a Naruto who we don't even know if like was going full power, or, like what his intent was. He just pretty much tried to swing at him with the Rasengan. So, I don't necessarily see that, but even if you did say that, I definitely see Onoki trying to go for the particle style cube. And even then in the anime, the manga doesn't show it clearly. Like Sasuke is able like to kind of move inside the cube before it closes. But again, even if Naruto gets hit by this, like Obito's gonna save him out by bailing out of
Exactly.
this. So
Yeah.
Naruto should do actually very fine in this encounter just because he can kind of keep everybody in this room at bay. Chojo might not even fight him because he's gonna hear that his name was Naruto Bridge and be like, oh nah, this is the guy, bro. This is the guy who folded Zabuza just like he did with Sasuke.
Yeah.
So, I definitely see that. It's only until the Raikage and Gaara come in that Naruto's like, okay, you can't really argue. Like Naruto's kind of gonna get overwhelmed at that point. But you could say like Naruto passes this phase because he wouldn't lose to the same opponent Sasuke did, but he
Yep.
would still lose because Sasuke was inevitably going to lose in those conditions regardless. Because
Yeah.
Sasuke was never going to be able to, even if Sasuke was like at full strength, he was never going to be able to take on the 4 Kage jumping him at the same time. So this is kind of like a win-lose one. He does better than Sasuke, like much better, but still loses inevitably because like he's not gonna be able to take on 4 Kage at the same time. I think that's a good
Yeah.
way of summing it up. Do you want to any closing thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like you said earlier, I think for the most part, in the vast majority of cases, when deducing an ability's an individual's caliber, feats usually override statements. So, like you said, Moose says, "Oh, you're not gonna be able to dodge me." Then it's contradicted by a literal feat. Well, where KCM Naruto gets the best of him in terms of speed, and then when you use, like you said, the Datara and a weaker iteration of Sasuke feat, where Sasuke high diffs Datara, who is certainly comparable to some arbitrary extent to Onoki. They seem to have some level of respect to for each other. I would argue Onoki is he's arbitrarily superior, but not by much.
agree,
They're
I
certainly
agree.
relative.
Yeah, fully. Yeah.
And them flying at the same speed implies, or not the same speed, but very relative speeds imply that. So this Sasuke is clearly superior to that Sasuke during the 5 Kage Summit. Naruto is comparable to that. Hence, Naruto would probably best Onoki, or at least sort of evade his particle style long enough. So, like ThunderGod said, it's going to be a phase that he completes, right? He completes his objective, but if there is prolonged exposure in this environment and the Raikage and Gaara do intervene in this altercation, Naruto will fall. He won't be able to single-handedly handle 4 Kages with Raikage, Gaara, Mei, and Onoki. It's very, very unlikely, in fact, nearly impossible for him to survive that. I mean, Sasuke almost died as well. Obito will come in, rescue, and save the day, and then things go the way they did in the original narrative. So yeah.
The biggest thing to like cap this off is that if Naruto's in the room with everybody when Zetsu appears, he's actually Onoki is going to be free real estate for him because Onoki like kind of had to take some time to actually take white Zetsu off of him. So it's like if everybody's having to deal with this for a moment, that's all Naruto needs to make for 4 clones to just go in and start aping on everybody too. So
Yeah.
Zetsu also makes a pretty big difference here. I'm not too maybe. I mean, I guess you could say he regenerates Naruto's chakra, but like what is he gonna do? Give Naruto like regular chakra? Like Naruto doesn't need any of that. He has Sage mode.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
his own chakra supplies are pretty absurd. So there is
Yeah.
that. And I definitely think Naruto has a much better time again than this Sasuke in this room. So kind of
Yeah.
a win, inevitable loss, unless you argue like Naruto takes Karin and leaves the area. But the way I see it, the events should just play out similar since the Raikage and Raikage and Gaara were very close. Like literally the second after Sasuke gets particle styled, they pull up. So take that as
Exactly.
you will. The last phase we have is Naruto versus Danzo. This is. Do you wanna start with this one? This one's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so this is perhaps the most interesting and, in fact, contentious one because there are a few questions that need to be asked to come to a conclusion, at least to me. So, that being, what is the discrepancy in power and caliber between Sasuke and Danzo? And what is the discrepancy between Sasuke and Naruto? So, concluding on this will allow us to conclude on the discrepancy between Sasuke and Naruto. So, the way I look at it is Danzo against Sasuke was literally murdered several times by Sasuke. Sasuke really had no trouble until he was temporarily out of his Susanoo. He got sealed. He even broke out of that and still survived and killed Danzo a few more times. Danzo, at least in terms of relatively to the Susanoo, in relation to the Susanoo, he is blatantly inferior to it.
Yeah.
He gets bested by it. That implies a huge discrepancy. I mean, if Sasuke is able to kill him without dying like 9, 10, 11 times, he is significantly superior to Danzo. Now, when it comes to Naruto, this is where it gets interesting and people start to disagree. But like I said earlier in the video, Naruto says if we both fight, we'll die, and he says, which implies that that current iteration of Sasuke is relative to himself. I would say that, despite that, I would say that Naruto isn't as inferior as Danzo is to Sasuke with his
Yes, I
Susanoo.
agree. Yeah. That's a good way of
Yeah,
putting it.
because of the implications we have, like Sogetsu and Zetsu and all of Naruto, and the way the narrative is presented, I would say that Naruto would be physically superior to Danzo. Now, could he kill Danzo 9, 10 times? Yes, he probably would have a harder time than Sasuke did in his altercation. But I do see Naruto being able to come out on top. Even physically, he could pound Danzo and kill him that way. People don't even realize how powerful his taijutsu is in stage mode. He has Frog Kata, he has Frog Kumite. He's able to do very, very high AP things with just his fists alone. I mean, we literally saw him throw rhinos in the air
Yeah.
against Pain. So his strength it's immense. So honestly, one shot to the chin to Danzo could probably kill him. So there's a very good likelihood that he would defeat Danzo, but I do think there is a lower probability that he defeats Danzo in comparison to Sasuke. That's
Yeah.
what I would say. So
It's interesting because I think he has like a harder and easier time in different ways. Because obviously,
yeah,
Sasuke had the luxury of just sitting inside a defense and not really worrying about what Danzo did to him. Naruto obviously doesn't have that, but he does have clones he can make to kind of watch his back and mitigate sneak attacks. So on top
yeah,
of Karin being there to support him, he does have these clones which kind of watch certain parts of the battlefield and like jump Danzo when he appears. And listen, Danzo's one of the few people in the series to actually die to regular kunai when he's using his Inagi. So at least by the anime, because
yeah, yeah.
at least by the anime. But if you kind of go up that, like, you listen, Sagemo and Naruto's punches are just gonna absolutely destroy him. Especially if Sasuke's sword slashes are. Danzo's only more of a rival to Sasuke once he leaves the Susanoo, which is verbatim faster, like Jay said. And obviously the Susanoo arrow is like a speed tier above that. So
Yep.
it's just going to be tough for Danzo to really get in on Naruto. Now, the best way to argue this is that Danzo's able to outtime the 5-minute timer of Sage Mode and catch Naruto there. But it's kind of tough because, like, okay, A, even if that's the case, like, Naruto's still not defenseless. But B, he can still have Karin, just like, it depends where his clone is. But he could just sneak a clone to the bottom of the bridge to be collecting nature energy while he's preoccupying Danzo. He kind of does a
Literally.
similar thing against Yamato too. He just has a clone like chill. I believe he has a clone chilling in his room. Editor, cut this out if it isn't true. But he is able to like sneak clones around and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
there is a chance for that. So I think Naruto does do better in different ways. If I was gonna give a win condition to Danzo, there's a couple things you have to talk about. The seal Danzo places on Naruto is one thing. I personally don't think this seal can restrict Naruto. It's kind of displayed in the series that if you're strong enough, you can somewhat overpower seals, especially since it's a basic seal. We see as, like, Sasuke's body grows stronger and he just is able to like break through the seal and like his body matures. Naruto, on the other hand, is physically, like, he's got more physical dexterity than this Sasuke, so he might have an easier time just trying to break out. A good comparison I can kind of paint for you guys is Naruto in the war arc. He goes outside to sense that the war is happening, he gets placed on in a seal by Iruka. He gets placed in shadow possession, and Aburame bugs come at him from all angles, and then he just activates QB chakra mode and flexes it all out. So there is a bit of a narrative that, like, if you're kind of strong enough, you can kind of like break out of these seals. Obviously that's not the case too, because some seals are specifically designed for different purposes. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because Danzo's seal is more of a basic one that restricts movement. So it's I'm not of the opinion it's like his tetragram seal that's like much crazier. It's more of a basic seal from what I've seen or what we can conclude. So that is a potential win con. But again, I don't even think that Naruto would be that defenseless, because his clones could still be on the battlefield to stop him. And it's going to be bad if Danzo does undo the Izanagi. Naruto's other win Danzo's other win condition is to summon the Baku to pretty much use the inhalation, and he'll use his like his wind style to, with the Baku enhanced inhalation, to kind of hit Naruto and do a high damaging move. Now, this kind of implies that Naruto would sit still like the Susanoo did. The Susanoo actually, like, for anybody who checks, actually did like kind of ingrain its hands into the concrete or whatever the bridge is made of, the stone, to not like get like pulled into the Baku, which kind of did let Danzo just shoot it. And even then, it just didn't fully break through Susanoo. So the AP of this wind style is just completely questionable. We don't know how strong it is, because we don't have anything like really to compare it to. It's just like a good feat. So I don't think Naruto's necessarily getting hit by it. I also don't think the Baku summon is really an issue for him, because if Naruto really needs to, he has his own summons in the form of Gamabunta, Gamakichi, or not Gamakichi, Gamahito, or Mr. Gamaken. He can summon multiple toads for Mount Miyaboku. So those aren't, that's not really an issue for him. If Naruto really wanted to, he could actually just go inside the Baku and overload it like with Jutsu, kind of like he does against the snake. Or like how he fights the Path of Pain inside Gamabunta's mouth. He doesn't really struggle too much with anything. So like the summon isn't really to anything. Danzo's win con really is niche, because his main asset against Sasuke was these surprise attacks that he was shooting wind style out or coming with these kunai. And the kunai are useless against Naruto, because he's just gonna flick his wrist and break them, or they're gonna break them in. Yeah, so he definitely has options, but I think Naruto's like clones do make it so that kind of mitigates it, on top of Kerin providing a breakdown for him of the jutsu. I also do think he'd probably be able to analyze the Izanagi. That's a bit more questionable, but again, I don't think Sasuke's leagues ahead of him in terms of just like raw intellect. Even Minato kind of notes this in the war arc. Like, Naruto's one of the few people that notes that say Senjutsu is effective against Obito. And like Minato notes like Naruto's kind of comparable to Sasuke. He's like, oh, my Naruto's as gifted as Sasuke is. So again, I don't think they're leagues ahead of one another. It's just they're very different in their intellect. So
Exactly.
I think Naruto would kind of pick up on this as well. The main thing, do you want to add to any of that with like this fight and how it might go?
Yeah, so to put some of the skeptics at ease that say, "Oh, is Naruto really superior to Danzo?" Well, using scaling, you can certainly establish that premise. Essentially, Hiruzen, Old Man Hiruzen, is relative to Orochimaru during the Konoha Crush arc. He is around signing level near his last days. Danzo, as we know in the narrative, fears Hiruzen. He was always in his shadow, right? He would rebel, but he would do it secretly, because he knows that Hiruzen was his superior. Right, so all these guys right here is in Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Danzo, are around that ballpark. Danzo's a little bit below that, because he feared Hiruzen all this time, with Hiruzen being the sort of the Hokage during the time. And like we said earlier in the video, Naruto, right, with the checkpoints that he reaches, surpasses that air and gets into more rare air with Sage Mode. So that just further reinforces the premise that Naruto is also in a different caliber like Sasuke, which is why those two are comparable. So physically, like we said, he is superior to Danzo. His margin for error is smaller than Sasuke's. He doesn't have a giant Susanoo to aid him in armor and things like that, or Amaterasu or Genjutsu, but he is in rare air that Danzo is not, right? So like ThunderGod said, the best sort of win conditions for Danzo would have to be like a very hard hitting or off guard attack, which he doesn't really display using, right? He uses the seals, and like ThunderGod said, when we look at the narrative empirically, there is instances where someone powerful enough can break these sort of like physical restricting seals, like Naruto did, like ThunderGod said, when there was like 3 sealer type shinobi all trying to get at him, and he still breaks out because he's just too powerful. We see it sort of in the tug-of-war exchange between Hiruzen and Orochimaru. He's getting sealed, but the reason it isn't automatic is because Orochimaru is relative in power to Hiruzen. We see it in several times, so that reinforces the premise ThunderGod made, that seals can be broken if you possess enough power to do so. And it's very safe to claim that Sage Mode Naruto possesses that physical power to
Yeah.
break free. If Sasuke was able to do it, it's very, very likely that Naruto would do the same.
Yeah.
And it's very in character for Naruto to have clones hidden somewhere, maybe under the bridge, like ThunderGod said, maybe somewhere else, maybe like next to Obito, where he's sitting and watching. He will have clones. He certainly will have clones. And lastly, when it comes to him being able to deduce the Izanagi, it might take him longer to deduce that. He doesn't have the high IQ Sasuke does. But like ThunderGod said, he's not dumb by any means. I mean, he was one of the only guys that deduced, like he said, that Jubito was susceptible to Sage Mode Jutsu, or Senjutsu. So he will deduce that. It might take a couple deaths of Danzo to get to that conclusion, but he's not going to be dumb and not come to that conclusion. He eventually will come to it, even if it does take a little longer than Sasuke. So
yeah, and even if you didn't argue that, like Karin would just tell him, like straight up.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
also comes to a
Exactly.
similar conclusion in the fight. And just add what you were saying too, on the Danzo stuff, because I definitely agree. Something else to know is like literally Danzo, as he uses like the reverse tetragram seal, like he just notes like to Hiru's, he's like, I was never able to catch up to you, which kind of also continues
Literally.
this narrative. Like maybe you could apply that's also like politically because he wanted to be Hokage, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think it would be kind of in reference to just Hiruzen as a whole. Like he's stronger, he accomplished what Danzo wanted to accomplish. Like Hiruzen was just
Exactly.
a greater individual in the shinobi world, more notoriety, all that stuff. So I definitely would
Yeah.
agree with that. And again, Danzo has win cons, but you know, I think Naruto can take the W here. And the only way you could really argue for Danzo is maybe if Sage Mode runs out. And even then, like, you know, but maybe one of the best, like, different ways I could see for Danzo is, like, he was planning on suppressing the QB with, like, Hashirama's DNA and, like, you know, the visual prowess he had. But you kind of have to argue Shisui's eye recovers, and he maybe tries to use that on Naruto. But Karin can
Yeah.
actually break Naruto out of Genjutsu if she needs to, so I don't think that's too much of an issue.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like, you kind of have to assume Danzo actually hits the right Naruto, who should be able to fool that Sharingan at the very least, like the basic Sharingan. So
Yeah,
again,
for sure.
I can't see that necessarily being likely, although it is possible. Kodo Matsukami is like probably the end all be all. Like sure, but like at the same time, Danzo couldn't decide what to use it for at the end of this fight with Sasuke, and it's like okay, even if he hits Naruto with it, Obito's just gonna come in and clean him, and then Naruto still wins anyway because like his support cleans up. So either way, it just ends in Naruto's W, even if Danzo subtly manipulates him to stop it. And that again, that's you know assuming it goes that way and he doesn't use it for Izanagi. So more likely than not, Naruto takes it, but Danzo, it is possible for him to possibly go away with the dub. Do you wanna add anything to that?
The Kodo conversation is certainly interesting, but I agree with you. At the very least, he knows Karin's there. She's obviously right there. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he was aware of Obito's presence as well. He was sitting like high up watching.
Yeah, completely.
That to me, rationally, is like a deterrent to not use Kodo, because the second he uses that, Obito's gonna be like, I'm gonna wash you now. Like I'm coming down, I'm gonna wash you up. So I conclude that Obito was a deterrent. At the very least, Karin was a deterrent to Danzo using Kodo. So I do deduce that it wouldn't be in character for him to use it here either. I don't think he'd use Kodo. It's a possibility, but the statistical chance of that is low. But either way, like you said, Karin will break him out, or Obito will have enough and wash him himself, which would not be a threat to him whatsoever. So it's a very, very unlikely win con if everything goes perfect. Like let's say he gets him in Kodo and makes him kill himself like in an instant or something. That's very, very unlikely. So yeah, the bottom line, like ThunderGod said, is the high likelihood is that Naruto will come out victorious and Danzo will fall. So
yeah,
that's basically what it is.
Yeah. So that seems pretty much. I mean, like I guess like a bonus round would be like Naruto versus like Kakashi. That
Oh
Sasuke
man.
fought.
Yeah.
But I still think this Naruto's stronger. I mean the best thing you could maybe give Kakashi is like instant Kamui. Since he like Kamui's away the Susanoo arrow, which is pretty absurd speed wise. It's like a speed feat in the series, but it's ridiculous. Something to know about Kamui is that even Pain didn't perceive that Kakashi was using it. So maybe you could say like the Kamui is faster than Kakashi himself, but and if you couldn't go up that, like the Susanoo arrow would just be blatantly faster than Kakashi. But I could see like a situation where Kakashi's kind of forced a Kamui or Rasen Shuriken or something to that degree. But you gotta have to go for like an out of character win con for Kakashi that he just tries to lop off the head of Naruto, which he only really does in the war arc against the ghetto statue. Until that
Yeah.
point, he just doesn't have the capability of using Kamui. And even if it fails, his body's just not going to be able to move accordingly. Like he kind of notes this when he tries to. He can't even stop Naruto from like fighting Sasuke because his like body's weak from Kamui.
Literally.
Naruto just actually overpowers him with the Shadow Clone. So
Yeah.
I would probably lean towards Sage Mode Naruto in this encounter too. I don't think Kakashi's at his level. He does perform well against Pain, but I don't think Kakashi's does as well as Naruto, obviously, especially since Pain is suppressed when he's fighting Kakashi. He's still trying to get intel even after, you know, Kakashi dodges like a kick from suppressed Pain, and then just he blatantly chakra fatigues himself to the point of death. So I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I agree. And even the when you compare the performances between Naruto versus Pain and Kakashi versus Pain, it's very blatant who's the superior. Right? Kakashi's being toyed with by the Tendo Pain. Tendo Pain's playing with him. He's like, all right, you're cool. He's a copy ninja. Not bad. But he even dismisses him. The way he like dismisses him as like a bad flicks an nail. I was like, let's get rid of him.
Yeah.
And then when Naruto shows up, he's like, oh, this guy's a threat. You know, the smartest man in the world arguably says that he is way beyond anybody else in the village, that being Shikamaru's father. He's saying, don't even get in the way, man. You'll literally be a liability. He is that guy right now. He's him right now. He's the only one that can contend. That just displays a large discrepancy between Kakashi and Naruto at this point in the narrative as well. So, like you said, the very best likelihood of Kakashi's victory is Kamui, and that's not in character for him anyway. What would most likely be the scenario similar to Sasuke is he has an emotional tie to Sasuke. That's probably another reason why he didn't just snipe off his head or attempt to. It'd be the same thing with Naruto more than likely. He's like, this was once my pupil. I have to stop him, but I'm not going to kill him. That's very in character for Kakashi. I don't think he's fast enough anyway. I think, like you said, Naruto would throw Rasen Shurikens right away, and he would have to Kamui that away, or you know, he would have to endure literal cellular destruction if he doesn't. So it's very, very unlikely that Kakashi would win that. Naruto would be faster, stronger, more durable. It's very, very unlikely. So it's very unlikely that he would beat him. Yeah.
And then there's like Sakura too, but like, you know.
Oh man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
Why even bring this up? So
Yeah.
that's the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. We sure did. It came out to quite a length. Hopefully you guys enjoyed like the in-depth discussion.
Yes, sir.
Try to take our time. Let us know your thoughts. Maybe you agree, disagree, why? Let us know. We think Naruto generally though, like to kind of encapsulate the video, does a lot better than Sasuke. I think that's generally what we're getting at. And that's just because like Sasuke's eyes like get worse the more you use them, and he's suffering drawbacks obviously. So he kind of has to have people bail him out a few times. Not to say Sasuke didn't do well, but it's just like they're again different arsenals at this point. So it's just it kind of worked out that way. But go check out Jay if you haven't. We're gonna record on his channel at some point. If you enjoyed him, enjoyed this commentary, please check him out. I would love that.
Yes, sir.
And we'll catch you next time. Bye bye.
Peace out, y'all.